We know that the body is one big interdependent system, even though in medicine we tend to focus just on one of the many systems. In the case of multiple sclerosis, that would be the nervous system, right? But it shouldn't surprise us that advances in one area of medicine end up having a ripple effect that can benefit multiple sclerosis as well. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. My name is Pam, and I've been living with multiple sclerosis for almost 40 years. I've made 2 videos in fairly recent months talking about this new therapy, CAR T cells, and I will post those 2 prior videos down below. And what was interesting about each of those videos is that they focused on a different company or entity that was working toward transitioning CAR T-cell therapy that was designed for cancer treatment to multiple sclerosis, because the mechanism involves T cells, which is a big deal for both certain kinds of cancers and multiple sclerosis. In a prior video, I linked to a video that described what CAR T-cell therapy is all about. So be sure to check that out if you're needing a little refresher. I won't repeat that here. I will share with you the more recent article that just came out about yet another organization that is entering the clinical trial phase with its CAR T-cell therapy for multiple sclerosis. The article is from Multiple Sclerosis News Today. It was published on August 14th of 2024. It's called Phase 1 Trial to Begin of CAR T-cell Therapy, azer-cel, for Progressive MS, formerly PBCAR0191. Azer-cel is designed to target and eliminate B cells. Sounds very familiar, right? Sounds a lot like the Kyverna clinical trials that are ongoing. It says that TG Therapeutics plans to soon launch a Phase 1 clinical trial to investigate the CAR T-cel therapy azer-cel, or azer-cel, in people with progressive forms of multiple sclerosis. And I should just for a second here step out and give you a short video that I found of 2 people discussing TG Therapeutics as far as their stock price goes. They have released a drug that you may be familiar with called Briumvi, which also treats multiple sclerosis. And so that has apparently caught on well with investors because clinicians like it, and that probably has given them the confidence to go ahead with this CAR T-cell therapy.
TGTX. This is a drug maker. They're TG Therapeutics. What do? Well, they had a very positive result, Pete, for their Briumvi. Let's just say it's an MS drug that they give you a 1-hour infusion, I believe just once a year, Pete. And it's for MS treatment. TGTX is getting a nice pop from the positive statements made by a number of people, including their CEO.
Yeah, it's up 23%, or at least it was last I looked. It could be a little bit less than that. They beat on the sales that they had, John. They also raised the guidance, and they lowered their expenses. I mean, this again, very, very impressive. That's why the stock is pretty close. It's not at the 52-week highs, but it's very, very close to those 52-week highs. It's a really, really great report, I think, in just about every way that you could imagine. They don't have a lot of depth, but they've got a few different treatments that are sitting there right now, John, ready to go in the pipeline. So that's something as well. But they're earlier stage. This is truly about this MS drug, the efficiencies that they've been able to do, and why, and the fact that this thing is absolutely crushing it right now.
Okay, back to the article. The announcement comes after the U.S. Food and Drug Administration cleared TG's investigational new drug, IND, application, in allowing it to begin clinical trials of azer-cel with people. Azer-cel was originated by Precision Biosciences, but TG Therapeutics acquired the global rights in January to develop it for autoimmune diseases and other indications outside cancer. The licensing deal gave Precision an upfront payment of $17.5 million, and the company is also eligible to receive milestone payments of up to $288 million. So money talks, I guess, and if they're willing to lay out this much money, they must see a lot of potential. We would like to congratulate TG Therapeutics on receiving IND clearance for azer-cel in patients with progressive multiple sclerosis. Michael Amoroso, CEO of Precision Biosciences, said in a press release, "We believe the expansion of allogeneic CAR-T into autoimmune diseases holds the potential to unlock new therapies for patients living with chronic disease. MS is an autoimmune disease where the immune system erroneously attacks the brain and spinal cord, causing inflammation and nerve cell damage. B cells, a type of immune cell that produces antibodies, are one of the main drivers of this inflammatory attack. Eliminating the cells is a therapeutic strategy used by several MS disease-modifying therapies that have shown promise in relapsing forms of MS. Only Ocrevus, or ocrelizumab, an antibody that targets B cells by binding to the CD20 protein at their surface, is approved for primary progressive MS, however. And that, of course, is a chronic problem that not very many drugs are targeted at the progressive forms of MS, but this CAR-T cell therapy seems to be the glaring exception. Azer-cel targets B cells using donor T cells. Azer-cel, formerly PBCAR-0191, is also designed to target and eliminate B cells. It belongs to a class of allogeneic CAR-T cell therapies where a donor's immune T cells are modified with a man-made receptor to target and eliminate other cells. T cells can recognize specific molecules on the surface of cells. Once they do, one function is to kill the flagged cells in a highly specific manner. But T cells can be engineered to become more effective and specific. This is done by loading them with a chimeric antigen receptor, or CAR, designed to recognize a particular target. Azer-cel contains CAR-T cells that are modified to recognize CD19, a molecule on the surface of B cells. Once infused into the patient, the modified T cells should eliminate these cells from circulation. Most CAR-T cell therapies are made with a patient's own T cells, which avoids complications from donor-derived cells. And we've talked about this in my earlier videos, that this is very nice. This is a lot like stem cell therapy in that you're getting your own cells back. But as an allogeneic CAR-T cell therapy, azer-cel uses T cells from a donor to create an off-the-shelf option to make the treatment more accessible. That is interesting. This distinction may have some advantages, but of course, we all know the disadvantages of receiving anything from a donor. That does increase the odds of problems like rejection or reaction. While this could give rise to complications such as graft versus host disease, GVHD, wherein the donor T cells attack the patient's healthy cells and tissues, Precision Biosciences designed azer-cel to mitigate these complications. How they do that? They probably aren't going to tell us here. The company has already tested the therapy in a number of B-cell cancers, and the results have been generally positive. Okay, not universally positive, but generally. And I suppose that to an extent, their method of mitigating the complications is more than likely proprietary, so we probably aren't going to get any intimate details about it. But they say, we look forward to TG Therapeutics initiating a clinical trial for azer-cel in autoimmune disease as we focus on the advancement of our own wholly owned in vivo gene editing pipeline, Amoroso said. But we need to be sure to remember, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, right? There's always a downside, And they did talk a little bit about the problems with CAR T-cell therapy that they're going to be looking at ways to mitigate. In fact, we ought to go out and see what Mayo Clinic has to say about the side effects of CAR T-cell therapy.
The main toxicities of the currently FDA-approved BCMA CAR T-cell therapies for multiple myeloma include cytopenias, infections, and then, the main one that we watch out for, one of the main ones is cytokine release syndrome, which is an acute systemic inflammatory syndrome characterized by fever, multiple organ dysfunction, and that's caused by the expansion of the CAR T cells once they're infused into the patient. When those T cells start to expand, they release other inflammatory proteins known as cytokines, which further activate the CAR T cells, expand the CAR T cells. It activates, other T cells, macrophages, endothelial cells. So it's sort of like an inflammatory chain reaction that can happen when you infuse the CAR T cells. That we monitor for. Another toxicity is neurologic toxicity known as ICANS, or immune effector cell associated neurotoxicity syndrome, which can manifest as headaches, confusion, language impairment, fine motor impairment, and even seizures. Patients can have any of those symptoms, and it's due to the expansion of the CAR T cells and the release of these cytokines, which disrupt the blood-brain barrier, allowing inflammation into the central nervous system. And, with CRS, cytokine release syndrome, and ICANS, death has been reported due to these side effects, but luckily, most of the times, these toxicities are low grade, and they're manageable with supportive care. So, for example, for CRS, we use a drug called tocilizumab, which neutralizes a cytokine known as IL-6, which is a key cytokine leading to the inflammation that causes CRS. It's basically an antibody that will neutralize IL-6. And then for the ICANS, or the neurologic toxicity, we have anakinra, which is an IL-1, another cytokine receptor antagonist, and we also have corticosteroids, which help, lead to the resolution of this toxicity in patients with multiple myeloma. I mean, 95% of patients who receive CAR T-cell therapy, anti-BCMA CAR T-cell therapy, will have low-grade cytokine release syndrome and ICANS. Only a small percentage will have severe toxicity, but it is very manageable and treatable.
No, that's excellent. Thanks for pointing out all these side effects that can happen. But as you rightly mentioned, it's important for our patients and our physician partners to keep in mind that in majority of the cases, the side effects are low grade. There's only a small proportion of patients where any high grade side effects can happen. And frankly, our management or handling of these side effects has also evolved over time. So we are able to predict them faster. We are able to act on them sooner, so that in majority of the cases, these side effects do not become advanced grade. So thanks for pointing that out.
Okay, so I've given you kind of, as best as I could, kind of a balanced view of CAR T-cell therapy, what's good, what's promising, what's even exciting. But I want to ground it in some reality so that we don't go thinking that it's a free lunch, because nothing really is. Even at that, though, we have to remember that scientists are optimistic that they can address these problems. I'll play you just a segment of an interview with a doctor at the Mayo Clinic who describes his vision for the future of CAR T-cell therapy. Of course, he's speaking in terms of cancer, but we know that there are many other applications, including multiple sclerosis.
The future looks bright. I think that we will get eventually to that concept of not just treating a cancer, but treating that cancer in that patient with the least amount of side effects and the maximum efficacy. So that's really where the goal is going to be.
I'm thinking that what Dr. Carfon says here about specificity is really the key, perhaps, to managing those side effects that you heard about earlier. The more tailored something is to your specific MS, the fewer side effects you're likely to have, is what I'm thinking. So I'm glad that they're moving things in that direction. Well, I don't know. Have I totally confused you yet? I've gotten you all excited, then I've kind of probably poured a bucket of cold water on it, and then at the end I've tried returning you to a state of hope, perhaps. I'm curious to know, though, after all of what you've heard about CAR T-cell therapy in this video and the prior videos that I made, and other things that you may have seen and read, what do you think about this therapy? Is this something you might be interested in? Let me know in the comments. But that's all I have for you today. So until my next video, do take really good care of yourself